Evening. My name is Amy Davidson. I am the Senior Lettings Manager for Greenslade Taylor Hunt in the Taunton office, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Ben Goodyear, who is our Lettings Manager over at South Molton and Barnstable.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Tonight, Ben and I are going to be just doing a very short live chat for you regarding two important updates with regard to the changing legislation within the lettings industry. This is mainly aimed at landlords who maybe who rent their properties out and manage it themselves. So it's very important the changes that are coming into place that you actually are adhering to the regulations because there's a lot of changes, especially surrounding EPCs and the abolishment of the Section 21 notice. We've picked these two topics tonight mainly because these are the questions that a lot of landlords are asking about. The plans to abolish the Section 21 so-called no-fault evictions were first started in April 2019. And now, more than 3 years on, the government is publishing its long-awaited white paper on this subject and wider plans for the rental market. So, the rental reform plans have been published. The main section that we're going to be looking at tonight is the abolishment of the Section 21. But before I get into that, I'm going to start right back at the beginning about when you have started your tenancy. So again, this is aimed at landlords who are managing their own properties. When a tenancy starts, so when you have a new tenant going into your property, you have to make sure that you have served correct legal documentation. Failure to do this means that you cannot serve a Section 21 if you want to regain possession back of your property. So the documents that you need to be serving is an up-to-date how to rent guide, which is found on the government website. If you have a property that has gas central heating, you need to make sure that you've got an in-date landlord gas safety certificate, and that's provided to your tenant. Electrical installation condition report, as well as a Legionnaire's risk assessment. And just to throw something else into the mix with this, when a tenant moves in, you must test the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms within that property in front of the tenant to prove that they are working. You must also note expiry dates as well and make sure that you've provided that information to your tenant. You also need to have written confirmation. This can be via email if needs be from your tenant that they have received those documents. Because again, if you do not have proof that all of those documents were served at the start of your tenancy, you can't serve your notice. So if you have done all of that and you are now at the point where you want to serve notice, currently, as it stands, the Section 21 or Form 6A that we are currently using is still in place. You do not need a reason to serve it to your tenant. So it's a 2-month notice from a landlord to a tenant. One thing that's very important is that you must understand the serving of a Section 21 notice is not an eviction. Lots of landlords are of the opinion it is an eviction notice to their tenant. This is not the case. It is a notice requiring possession of the property back. The only way an eviction notice can be served is through the courts once that Section 21 has then, once the date has expired. If your tenants haven't found anywhere to rent, then you can proceed with through the courts to gain an eviction notice. So it's very important that you know the difference, that it's not going to guarantee that your tenants are going to leave on that date. Only a court can actually do that. But most tenants, 9 times out of 10, most tenants will find something else and on they go on their merry way. Another point to note as well before you serve your notice, if you are a landlord that has a property with gas, you must make sure that during that tenancy, you have served gas safety certificates to your tenant annually. If you have not done this, you are not able to serve notice, and then you will have to seek legal advice on being able to obtain possession back from your property. So basically, what the government are doing, once this Section 21 comes in, we do not know the dates for this as yet. A lot of people are predicting either April or October of next year, but we do not have clarification as to when this is going to happen. It is shaking up the rental market. Landlords are becoming a bit more nervous. but you don't need to be. If you have got an agent, an ALA qualified agent that works on your behalf, speak to them, because we can reassure you about how everything is going to play out. And what the government are looking at doing is updating the discretionary and the mandatory grounds within the Section 8 notice. So you will be able to serve your tenant notice, you just need to have a reason to do so. So when this abolishment comes in, there'll be a new form in place that you'll be able to serve. This can be if you want your property back to sell, if you want to move back into the property yourself, antisocial behaviour, rent arrears. There will be extra clauses within that notice so that you are able to serve them a possession order. What the government are trying to do is stop retaliatory notices being served. So if a tenant brings up maintenance issues and the landlord doesn't like it, right, I'm serving notice. Unfortunately, it does happen, and they are trying to tighten everything up so that it's a fair rental system for tenants. So I would say to any landlords, don't panic about it, because the government are putting things in place within the Section 8, which means that you can still serve. So once that's all come in, that is, in a nutshell, basically, once that abolishment has taken place and we have the dates, there will be other notices that you can serve. And as long as the legal documentation has been served correctly at the start of the tenancy, there is no reason why you are not able to then proceed with serving a possession order. So that's my side of things with regard to the reform bill that's coming in. And I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Ben, who's going to speak, who's going to talk to you a bit more detail about the EPC regulations that are due to take place. So Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Cheers. Okay, so alongside the changes to obviously abolishing of Section 21 and whatnot, one of the other biggest things that we're hearing from landlords with concerns is to do with the coming changes to the Minimum Energy Performance Certificate, or EPC standards. Some obviously are fully aware of what's going on. Equally, some seem to believe that because nothing has been officially confirmed, that they don't actually need to do anything at the moment. Our advice is that everyone really should be familiarising themselves with the proposed changes and looking to take action sooner rather than later. So a brief outline of what you need to know. The current rules. Obviously, in 2015, new laws set the minimum energy efficiency standards, stating that private property in England and Wales must have an EPC rating of E or above to be able to be legally let. These came into force on the 1st of April 2018 for all new tenancies, and then on the 1st of April 2020 for all tenancies and existing tenancies. There are several exemptions to having the EPC or having to get it to the minimum standard, which you can register your property for if you believe that it falls into those categories. Firstly, I mean, there is a maximum cost cap currently set at £3,500 per property, including VAT. Which if after spending this amount on improvements, the property still doesn't meet the EPC rating, the minimum rating, you would be able to register for an exemption. Other exemptions would include where work would damage or devalue the building, if there's evidence from a qualified surveyor, where you can't get necessarily third-party permission, for example, from a planning authority or a freeholder. If the property is listed, potentially then it would also be exempt, and also detached properties that are smaller than 50 square meters. These exemptions are valid for 5 years, and there is also a temporary 6-month exemption for any new landlords. What's changing with the regulations? In autumn 2020, the government began a consultation on tightening the minimum energy efficiency standards. And whilst no regulations have been drafted, the consultation closed in 2021, and the main proposed changes are as follows: that the minimum EPC rating will be raised from an E to a C. The plan is it currently is to enforce this from the 1st of April 2025 for new tenancies, and then again at a later date, the 1st of April 2028 for existing tenancies. The cost cap is also changing, so where it's currently set at 3,500 per property, that will be raising to £10,000 per property. The government says this would be sufficient to bring more than 90% of D-rated properties up to a C rating, as well as nearly 60% of E-rated properties. What isn't clear is whether any existing spending would count towards that cost cap. There's likely also to be what's called a fabric first policy to be introduced. Now, what this would do is control the order of the work is carried out. So improvements to the fabric of the building, such as insulations, windows, doors, must be done before additional measures such as new heating systems are installed. The exemptions would remain largely unchanged. And additionally, the proposals recommend clarifying the rules for listed buildings and those in conservation areas, and introducing a central database both for compliance and exemptions. With all that being said, what I would suggest is that we don't delay, because there are good reasons for you to start planning now. One would be to beat supply shortages, because when the new rules are announced, there is likely to be quite a rush to book tradesmen and order materials, which are already struggling with supply, and that could obviously further increase lead times and also prices. Starting now as well, you could look to actually spread the costs rather than suddenly facing a large bill just before the deadline, which would also give you time to seek additional funding and see what sort of grants may be available to you. Also, it would increase the flexibility, because if the fabric first principle is approved, it would restrict the work that you could do. For example, if you wanted to upgrade the heating system, you might not be able to do that until you've improved the insulation or replaced the windows. So if you could get the property up to a C rating now, then that measure would not affect you. You may think, why upgrade now? The last thing you need is the prospect of more expensive renovation work. However, there are actually some clear benefits to boosting your EPC rating. The main one obviously is being added value to the property. Research shows when other factors are excluded, properties rated B or C sell for around 5% more than those rated as a D. It's also potential that obviously it would reduce bills for the tenant. So in simple terms, if tenants spend less energy on bills, potentially they can afford to pay more rent.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Lower bills will also make it less likely that your tenants will end up going into arrears or struggling or looking to move on. Plus, of course, a warm and comfortable home means happier tenants, longer tenancies, less void periods. It's also about protecting your property. By keeping the property warm and dry, it will tend to make it less prone to condensation, damp and mould. But obviously not all installation properties are suitable for all properties, so you'd need to take some professional advice on that. I'd also recommend looking for cheap fixes. There's well over 2 million PRS properties currently in EPC Band D, and in many cases it might not cost much to reach the C rating. Excuse me. For example, houses with cavity walls that don't have insulation in the cavity, and I believe more than a third of properties in the PRS are shown as having a lack of proper loft insulation. Put together, these two measures could put the rating up 1 or even 2 EPC bands at a cost of less than £1,000. So as an overview, I think it's really important that we need to be having a look at where your properties are now, and especially if you have a portfolio, trying to spread the cost and looking at what action you can take now before these deadlines come into force to make sure you're in the best possible position.
A lot of landlords leave it until the last minute. When we had the recent changes, bringing it up to an E, a lot of people left it right until the last minute. Then it was a struggle to get everything done within the time frame that the government had put forward. So absolutely right with what Ben's saying. Start now so that you're getting the ball rolling, because there's already a shortage out there of supplies. We're seeing it in different areas of especially on the maintenance side. So absolutely right. It's best to start looking into it now and getting it ready for when these regulations actually come in.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So that's basically it. What Ben and I, well, as we said at the beginning, it's a very quick live stream tonight with just 2 important factors that are coming in. So if there's any questions out there, by all means, fire away. No, apparently we got
No,
no questions coming through. So it's an easy one for us tonight.
absolutely. We must have explained it exceptionally well.
I think we did explain it exceptionally well. So no, that's, any questions at all though, by all means, if you are a landlord that manages your own properties, seek out your local Greenslade Taylor Hunt office. Do give our managers a call. We are ALA qualified agents. We are up on all the latest legislation that is coming in, and we're able to advise you through every piece of it. So thank you ever so much for those that have tuned in, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.